The theme of this retreat is the divine in daily life. And before we enter into the particular forms, it's useful to ask ourselves, why? Why would you want to experience, realize the divine in daily life? I look at a young man fresh out of college, and his mind is dreaming of getting into a new job, making lots of money, achieving name, fame, wealth, enjoyment, satisfaction, getting into a happy romantic relationship, getting married, having children, going on holidays, and perhaps later in life, having done everything that he would like to do, which he would enjoy doing, he will have a secure, safe retirement, enjoy time with his grandchildren, perhaps do other things which now interest him more. What's this business of bringing in divine in daily life? Why would you want to do that even when you have so much more to look forward to? Most of us here are not that college child, though we have been through it. Most of us have gone further, and we know life doesn't work that way. We realize very quickly that although I want to do so much, my body is unable to do it. My health breaks down when I push too much. I don't have enough energy. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. I want to enjoy life, but I find myself split between different commitments. In attempting to fulfill this, I fail in another. And although I seem to enjoy this in the moment, the consequences are terrible because I have to lose so much more and suffer so much more in a different aspect of life. I realize very quickly that people are not so simple. I am unable to keep up with the challenges, with the pace. I find my understanding, my intelligence, my insight and knowledge are insufficient. I all the time make mistakes, which are expensive. A small mistake now, I have to pay for the next 10 years. My entire business will collapse with one wrong decision. And when all these stresses pile up on me, I don't have peace. I don't have happiness. I can go to all the holidays with the most beautifully advertised images, but I don't experience what the images promise me. And after all that, at the end of my career, I look back and I say, all those things that I struggled to build are now gone. What was the point of it all? And I'm still not happy. I'm still looking for something which I thought I will get within a few years after my college. I've still not got it. And perhaps you even give up on some of those ideals. I just want to be happy, peaceful, all alone. I don't want any of that fame and the problems which come with it. Just to be a little comfortable and happy in my little space is all I need. Life generally throws challenges at us which we are incapable of overcoming, or so it seems. In fact, precisely during those challenges which seem insurmountable, something pushes from within, helps us through, and when the challenge is overcome, we look back and we say, I don't know where that energy came from. I don't know where that guidance, that insight, that support, that strength came from. But now that I'm through this, I have grown. I'm more mature. I'm not so much afraid of those types of problems which I thought I would be afraid of. Something happens during those challenges precisely that compels us to grow, and we are helped in that growth. And if we were to truly introspect to find the source of that help, we find something deep within us which came forward at that point and then withdrew. And every time we have had a challenge, something has come forward and helped. And after a while, perhaps, we begin to look forward to challenges. Or perhaps when the challenges come, even if we don't want them, we know that through this we will grow. However painful the process might be, we will grow, and later we will look back with satisfaction at the growth. And a different kind of enjoyment begins to grow upon us. It is this inner support, this inner push, this inner help, which is our first experience of what we would call spirituality, or the relationship with the divine. And sometimes we find it is when that connection is strongest that we feel most fulfilled, most at peace, most joyous. And this is where we begin to understand the importance of this theme, divine in daily life. The problem, though, is all our associations with the divine, spiritual life, yoga, etc., are associations with abandonment of life, denial of happiness, denial of enjoyment, denial of name, fame, and success. It's as if we have been taught from childhood, either you have a successful life or you have a spiritual life. And spirituality means negating success of life, giving up enjoyment, giving up, becoming poor, living austere, becoming weak, dependent, bare, even suffering, without which you're not really doing yoga. Even I find people use this phrase in equivalent terms when somebody is going through a lot of suffering. He says, I'm going through intense yoga. I'm sorry to say that's not yoga, that's suffering. And these associations unfortunately come in the way. And so generally we say, even after we realize the need for something deeper, we say, you know what, I will read your yoga books after I retire. That's when I'll have the time and the interest, perhaps. When I've done it all, I've had my enjoyment of life. Sri Aurobindo puts it differently. The mother, in fact, goes so far as to say, one of the most important messages of Sri Aurobindo for humanity is that you do not have to give up life to realize the divine. Mother goes so far as to say this schism, this division between spiritual life and material life is a falsehood. Because there is nothing which is not essentially divine. Those flowers, the beauty, the perfume of those flowers are an expression of divinity. It's the smile of the divine that looks out to you through those flowers. That joy that you experience when you do something wonderful, when you conquer, when you overcome challenges, when you attain to an objective, when you become successful by whatever definition you have set yourself for, that joy which you experience is also a part of the divine expression in life. That knowledge, that brilliance, that achievement, that skill with which you overcome and achieve, that also is an expression of the divine in life. The strength with which you fight and overcome is also an expression of the divine. There is nothing in life which is not in essence divine, but on the other hand, there is nothing which in fulfillment is not an expression of the divine. All fulfillment of life is essentially a fulfillment of the divine purpose in life. And therefore, this division between material life and spiritual life is a falsehood. Because when you make this division, you mean that spiritual life denies matter and denies fulfillment of life. That's not true. The universe itself is born out of the divine delight. To manifest divinity, to manifest that delight in form, in multiplicity. And so to claim that that is not divine is a falsehood. On the other hand, if I say that I'm going to fulfill my college dream of what my life is supposed to be, and that's divine life and spiritual life, that would be an error. it would be an immaturity. It would be coming from an ignorance, lack of sufficient understanding. On the other hand, as we go through life and our perspective of life changes and we mature, we also change in what we find worthwhile in life. The things which we found worthwhile during our college days are not so interesting anymore. When I was 10 years old, perhaps a lollipop or a candy was something really valuable. And now as an adult, I look back and I laugh. And my child asks for candy and I say, okay, you can have it. But it's not so important. There are more interesting things out there. So as we mature, the things which we find enjoyable and worthwhile, in fact, are closer to that sense of the divine fulfillment. And so rather than waiting until I am 50 or 60 to realize what's important and what's not, I can begin the journey just as I emerge out of college. And then I would have the advantage of youth and the maturity of age and be able to fulfill my life much more rapidly, much more completely, more thoroughly, more perfectly. And really that's what this is about when we speak of the divine in daily life. It's about fulfillment of life, not of denial of life. But the sense of fulfillment now has to be seen more profoundly. The mother has a 4-part article which is published in this booklet titled The 4 Austerities and the 4 Liberations, which should have been distributed to all of you. And we will rest on this text for the theme of our discussion over the next few days. And I would ask you to take it as a homework that you should read the chapter of the theme of the day before you come. So you'll have time this evening, I'm sure, to read today's theme as well as perhaps tomorrow's, and it will be worth it. And because you will read it anyway, I'm sure you will do your homework. I will not go through it in detail. I will lean on it for pointers, for themes, and then elaborate in a different way perhaps, and keep time for interactions which would be more useful. The mother starts this text by saying that to pursue an integral education that leads to the supramental realization, 4 austerities are necessary, and with them 4 liberations. Now, in one sentence, something very profound has been encapsulated. Pursuing an integral education. Hello, I just finished my college long ago, many decades ago. What are you talking about education here? Well, the sense of education here is different. Integral education. It's an education which is all-inclusive, but which is not what you did in school. It's something which you do in life, the education of life itself. In fact, what does school do really? School attempts to compress the lessons of life at an early age, so that you could get into life already ready for doing things which otherwise you would learn through so many errors over decades. And integral education is doing the same thing now, but taking it more profoundly and including everything of your nature, of your being, of yourself. School just focused on a few intellectual skills and a few other material skills. It was a very narrow preparation. But the journey of life is an ongoing education, and this is the theme. And where is this journey going? That's very important, because that's what makes it spiritual or not. As we saw, if you focus on growth, self-development, it makes life fulfilling, but it may not necessarily make it spiritual. What makes it spiritual is the direction in which you grow. I could develop my skills and faculties so that I can be a better engineer, businessman, artist, leader, whatever it is you want to do. That's good, but it won't make it spiritual. It's when we set the direction all the way to the end, to the highest, and now we use the word divine, potential, then it becomes spiritual. Only self-development is a good preparation, but it doesn't make it spiritual. So, all the way to the highest is what in the vocabulary of Sri Aurobindo would be the supramental realization. What that means, we need not go into now, but it means going all the way to the highest possibility of our human potential. And for that, 4 austerities. Again, the word austerity is important. It is a translation of the word tapasya from Sanskrit. Some of you would be seeing the serials of Mahadev perhaps, or mythological serials with subtitles. Unfortunately, tapasya is always translated as penance or penitence. That's a wrong translation. Penance and penitence have very specific meanings within the context of the English language. They always involve some error you made for which you are repenting, for which you go through suffering to make up for the error made, etc. Tapasya does not have that sense. Tapasya, tapas itself is heat. The word means heat. It is the concentration, intensification of your energies in concentration to break through, to realize, to achieve, to overcome. That is tapas. And tapasya is a sustained, organized, concentrated effort to overcome, to realize something. And so the closer English equivalent would be austerity, because there is a concentration, there is a denial of something which has to be set aside in order to concentrate, and so the sense of austerity comes, but leading to liberation. You grow out of a limitation, out of an incapacity to something greater. And if the result of this concentration is a liberation to something greater, you can see how it makes life much more fulfilling, because now you're capable of more, much more, than you were even programmed to be before. I will take one example and then generalize from there. And I want to take the example of this very famous film actor. And he's famous not for his acting, but because he was a bodybuilder. And that is Arnold Schwarzenegger. His acting was okay, but his greatness was his body and what he did with his body. And what did he do? He was in school days the weakest child in school, the most sickly, always ill. And at the age of 10 or so, one day, he was inspired and he said, I am going to be the strongest man in the world. Fortunately, he didn't speak of it to his parents or to his teachers or his friends, otherwise they would have ridiculed him. He is the sickliest kid, weakest kid. What's this silly dream you have? He didn't speak of it. Rather, he channeled his energies into tapas, concentrated, organized, structured, persistent effort. And he built his body. He built his body in a way that he overcame the limitations of his genes. We're taught in our biology that your genes decide your future. Now they're tracing all kinds of things to your genes. Even they say that your thinking capacity is dependent on your genes. Your goodness, your generosity is now traced back to genes. Everything they want to trace back to genes and say, you're just a machine. And your destiny is written in your genes. You're locked in that. That's an error. And the spiritual truth is that your genes are only a starting point. They're a supporting base. Everything can emerge out of that. You can overcome the limitations of your genes and your memes and your everything else. Potentially within you is the all potential, the same potential which created the Big Bang. You can reprogram, recast, reshape, recreate everything within you, including all of yourself and all of the world. And Arnold Schwarzenegger, by pursuing a tapas of the body, overcame his genetic limitations and made his body this, which you see in his movies. And not only that, he became Mr. Universe, the strongest man in the world, but he was successively Mr. Universe every year, 7 times. And he was so far ahead of the others that out of compassion for the rest, he stopped participating in those competitions to give a chance for others to win. How did he do it? What was the nature of the tapas? It was an all-comprehensive. It was not just regular bodybuilding. There was a whole psychological dimension to it, even a spiritual dimension to it. When you hear his interviews, you can see glimpses of these things. And there was an art. There was a making of the body more conscious. He explained that for him, taking a pose to show the muscles was not enough. In the transition from one pose to the next, the transition itself had to be beautiful and perfect. And for this, he trained in ballet. On the one side, he was doing his bodybuilding. On the other side, he was doing ballet. On the other side, he was doing his own meditations, all kinds of things. A comprehensive, all-inclusive program, which took him to this extraordinary achievement. And now I'm going to generalize from this example and say, all successful people who have attained anything of lasting value could do it because of a spiritual afflatus, a spiritual inspiration, a spiritual touch, a reliance on an inner strength. If not for that, they could not achieve something worthwhile which has lasting value. A lot of people become famous. There's a flash in the pan, you just happen to witness a great disaster and you're famous for those 15 minutes of your interviews on national TV. There's nothing lasting in that. And then there are those actors, scientists, artists, businessmen who have a lasting value that they have brought in their field. They may be famous, sometimes they are not well known. They choose to remain outside that public eye, but still, what they have achieved stays. And that's because of this spiritual dimension. Always, without exception, it is this which makes it successful, which makes life successful, by whatever your definition of success, as long as it has this sense of lasting value. You want to be a good businessman who does something of lasting value that gives you deep satisfaction? Well, it is this spiritual dimension which will help you to fulfill that. And the same for art, the same for any other field. Even as a political leader, the ones who brought lasting changes in the political field, in the field of administration, were those who had a spiritual opening and a spiritual dimension to their life. The greatest scientists had this. And now you see how deliberately, consciously bringing this spiritual dimension into our daily life can help to lift life out of its norm into something greater, and it is that which gives you the sense of deep fulfillment and leads you to a deeper, greater success. And that's why this theme is so important. In a way, in following this theme, we are fulfilling not only our own individual deepest aspiration and purpose, that's why we were born. We are also fulfilling the deeper purpose of this creation, that's why the universe was born. And anything which fulfills the deeper purpose is always deeply satisfying. And somehow it doesn't matter what others think. The satisfaction is innate because it is your deepest fulfillment. On the other hand, sometimes you do things which impress others, you come away dissatisfied. Some of the greatest film stars have severe depression. They're successful in the eyes of the world, but to themselves, they've not done something truly worthwhile, or so they feel. And they're depressed. They have other problems which emerge from that, which leads often to suicides and things like that. Why? Because you did not fulfill your deepest need. Somewhere along the way, you went trying to satisfy what others thought was important. And so this fulfillment of your deepest need, your deepest purpose, is also fulfilling your soul, is also fulfilling the soul of the universe. And in order to fulfill in this way, there has to be a concentration of energies, a tapas. And 4 are the primary focal points of effort that the mother outlines here in this broad program. And these 4 represent 4 parts of our being. She puts it this way: on the physical plane, the divine expresses himself through beauty. On the mental plane, through knowledge. On the vital plane, through power. and on the psychic plane through love. So you have beauty, knowledge, power, and love. And these are the four, let's say, parts of the being which demand fulfillment. If you remove any one of them, you'll find yourself somehow dissatisfied in life. Unless all four are fulfilled, life is somehow incomplete. And so this fourfold tapas is what makes our life complete and leads us in the direction of our deepest fulfillment. The mother takes time to dissociate this tapas from the conventional ideas of self-mortification and causing pain and harm to the body. Every time there is a special occasion of the Kumbh Mela, you will see in all the world's newspapers pictures of ascetics doing weird things, looking very ugly, and that is projected as spiritual. That's not. Mother says very clearly, it is the question of, there's a major misunderstanding, she says, the question of ascetic practices which they mistake for spiritual disciplines. This has nothing to do with spirituality. It's an ascetic practice, that's all you can say. And she goes so far as to say, these things are extolled by a sort of mental and vital cruelty towards the body. But cruelty, even with regard to one's own body, is nonetheless cruelty. And all cruelty is a sign of great unconsciousness. Unconscious natures need strong sensations to feel something. That's all. And this has nothing to do with spirituality. You can torture your body all you want, it's not going to change your consciousness. It's not going to give you any experience of a deeper delight, joy, perfection, or beauty. So we push aside all those things. They are not spiritual, period. Whatever may be the error in people's thinkings, we make that correction for ourselves. Rather, what we mean by tapas, involving some kind of denial perhaps of certain things, would be only a detaching of certain tendencies in order to gain control and mastery. So for example, as a child, in order to gain mastery of your body, well, you have to compel the body to do certain things in a disciplined way, refusing certain things which it would have done otherwise. Let's look at a martial arts practitioner. You're made to do certain things, certain practices in a persistent way, denying certain other tendencies. Your body wants to lie down. You're tired, you want to lie down and sleep. No, you won't sleep now. You have to continue. You have to push the body's limit in order to help it to grow, overcome its inertia. That's how you train your gymnastics or athletics or whatever skill you want to build. Of course, there's a limit beyond which you have to give the body rest. But what you're pushing is overcoming an inertia and a habit which is limiting the body. And that's how you're going to grow in capacity for the body itself. That's the nature of the tapasya here that we're looking at. And she says, whenever you do something that's difficult, you increase your willpower and the strength of your nerves. And the four tapasyas, she describes as the tapasya of love, tapasya of knowledge, tapasya of power, and tapasya of beauty, in order of difficulty. The tapasya of love is the most difficult, and the tapasya of beauty is the least, generally. But again, she says, each one has his own temperament, his own nature. So we look at now the tapasya of beauty. That's the theme for our discussion today. And this has to do entirely with the training of the body. And everything you do in life, without exception, involves your body, isn't it? Even if you sleep, it's your body that sleeps. If you work, it's your body that works. Your mind needs the body. Your emotions need the body to be able to do anything in life. And so it's our base, it's our foundation. The result of any sustained discipline of yoga is that it will make the body strong, conscious, supple, more capable, more sensitive, and that allows you to enjoy life better, to be able to fulfill yourself better. The effect of any discipline on the life energies is to amplify the energies, to give you more energy to do more, to give you, in fact, enormous amounts of energy. Infinite energy is possible, that you can keep on doing whatever you want to do as long as you want to do. At least the energy won't flag. The body might flag. That's a different story. But you can tap into universal energy and make yourself capable of achieving anything with all the energy necessary. The result of the yoga on the mind is to free the mind from its habitual limitations, amplify its capacities, and give you access to knowledge, complete, error-free knowledge. And the effect of the yoga on the heart and the emotions is to give you the experience of a deeper sense of unity and love and compassion, mutuality, which allows you not only to relate to people in a more complete and healthy way, but you can feel what others feel. You can influence their feelings through your own feelings. You can give peace to another. You can give happiness to another. But most of all, you can experience lasting peace and happiness and a deeper sense of oneness with all. Now, all of these, you can see, are surely deeply resonating in us because they touch ideals. When you say we want to be happy, we want to have peace, we want to know everything, we want to be able to do everything, these are all pointing to a potential that's already within us. And they're all ideals because it seems as if they're impossible. But precisely through the process of yoga, all these are fulfilled. And the body is still the foundation for everything else, and therefore that's the first focus. And she says we must build nerves of steel in powerful and elastic muscles. The starting point is a very concrete material base. What do you have to do for that? I'm not going to go specifically with the text here. I'm going to widen the scope to things which you will not read in the text, but which are part of implications from the text. Well, one practical practice I would suggest is what's already being offered here through the asanas and the pranayama. If done in the right way, it can be one of the most effective means of making your body conscious, strong, healthy, supple, and also tap into a higher and more effective energy. The first key, though, is to make the body conscious. Everything else follows as a result. If you have not made the body conscious, you may still get the other things, but not completely, not perfectly. But once you make the body conscious, the other things become almost spontaneous and easy. And Mother suggests exercises which are so ordinary seeming, but so effective. And one of them will be one which I will assign to you now, meaning just after this. When you go down, and the exercise is to go down and up the stairs. Very simple exercise. We do that all the time anyway. But the exercise is to do it consciously. So when we leave this hall, I would like all of you to make that effort. As you leave the room, become fully conscious of your body. If you like, stand for a minute, making yourself fully conscious from head to toe. And when you can feel all your muscles, tissue, nerves, perhaps your bones, especially focus on the legs and arms, and then take one step down the stairs. Notice, feel all the tissue and muscles and nerves as they move. One leg, and then the other, and then the other, consciously maintaining full awareness all the way down through one floor. And then you'll have a bit of a passage to rest. Maybe you're tired, it was too much concentration. Take a rest, and then again do that with full concentration. You will find just that one exercise will be something so revealing. You will get to know your body. But then we will bring a deeper dimension to it. We make the body conscious, first by becoming aware of the sensations, and then we bring into it, intentionally infuse into it a consciousness. And then into that consciousness we infuse an intention. And then you are actually shaping your body consciousness from within. The results of that, let me give you the results, then we will go back to how we do it. The results of that will be, when your body is more conscious, you will feel when something is wrong. You will feel an illness before it gets into you. And when you can feel it, you can will it away. You will feel when something is not all right, there's an imbalance, and you'll be able to will it back into balance, into harmony. Sometimes you've eaten too much food and your stomach feels like it's going to get loose. And if you can feel where the imbalance is, you can will the stomach and it digests the food and there's no problem. You can feel there's an illness coming, I'm about to catch a cold, and you can will your body into intensifying its energies, rebalancing the energy flows, and that's it. You're free of the illness. And if perchance you have an illness, you have a cut, you have an injury, you can will your body to heal faster and heal without scar. Yes, it's possible. You can even get rid of an existing scar by willing your body to refuse that scar. After all, your entire body is rebuilding itself every 7 years. You know that, right? Every single cell and atom of your body is completely replaced every 7 years. So what prevents your body from remaining young always? From healing that scar? Because anyway, it's replacing it completely with new tissue. And the only thing preventing you, it's not the body's capacity, it's the consciousness inhabiting the body and the habits, imprints it brings into the body and the unconsciousness in the body. And as a result of unconsciousness, it's slavery to past habit, to get tired, to age, and to die. It's a habit of the species, of the tissue, of the cells. That was the mother's discovery. When she went deep into the cells, she discovered innately they are immortal. It's only a habit to get tired and age and die. And that habit can be changed if you can go into that and change it from within. We're not discussing that now, but we're getting close to that by saying you can make your body heal, overcome limitations, and so on. And the simple exercise to achieve this, walking up and down the stairs. Doesn't take much. But you understand the principle, and then you can extend the principle to all other activities. Do you go to play games? Perhaps you play tennis. Perhaps you play badminton. Perhaps you go cycling. Perhaps you like to go for walks in nature. Whatever activity you may do, you can bring this exercise into it, making the body conscious, doing it consciously, and then infusing into that consciousness and intention. And you'll see the result. So let's just do a simple exercise of this. And I want you to do that on the palm of your hand. If your hand is cold, just rub it lightly and then feel the center of your palm, your right hand. Okay? Now keep it like this, facing up. You can rest it on your leg or on the armrest. And feel. Feel the surface center of your palm. Just feel it. Just become aware. And very quickly you notice sensations. Perhaps a pulsing energy, perhaps a warmth, perhaps some kind of tingling sensation. Bring your attention on that sensation. Feel the awareness like an intensifying warmth or heat or just like a light or an awareness becoming more intense in the center of the palm. And notice it projects outside the surface of the palm, perhaps a centimeter or two. You can feel the awareness of the palm extending beyond that center. Perhaps it feels like a hole, perhaps it feels like a projection emerging, a stream of energy, a warmth gently flowing out. Can you intensify it? Can you will the warmth to become more hot, more warm? Try that for a while. Feel the warmth and then just will it to intensify from inside. And it does become warmer. And now feel the whole of your palm. Extend your awareness to all the fingers. Palm, fingers, and then the back of the hand. Feel all around. Just become aware of all the sensations of the skin all around. Everything in one go. And in the same way as before, intensify your awareness of your palm. Feel the fingers, the tissue of the fingers, the insides of the fingers, the palm, the front and the back, and intensify the awareness. Until it feels as if your awareness extends slightly outside the surface of the skin, as if surrounding the whole palm you're wearing thick gloves. Your awareness itself extends around the fingers as if you're wearing thick gloves. Can you feel that? And continue to intensify. Just will the whole awareness to become more aware, more conscious. And perhaps gently will it to become slightly warmer, so that the whole hand, the whole palm, hand, fingers become warmer. Notice now your left hand and your right hand. Is there a difference in temperature? Your left hand is perhaps much cooler, your right hand is much warmer than the left. You notice the difference? And you just did it with your mental awareness. Nothing, no physical movement. And now we'll complete with one more step. So far it's good. It's good for self-development. It's still not spiritual. So we will bring into this something deeper. Feel the hand. Feel the consciousness of the hand, the awareness of your right hand. And then bring into it an intention to make this hand conscious, to offer this hand in service to the divine. That everything this hand does should be done in consecration, in service. Invoke as if the hand calls out. Invoke peace, light, joy into the hand. Feel your hand grow as if more gentle, soft, clear, pure. As if the hand itself aspires to feel closeness with divinity. Feel love, feel gratitude, joy for the divine. As if the hand offers a prayer wordlessly, giving itself. And we pause with that. Bring our attention back. And as with your attention back to where you normally have it, feel the sensation of the hand, what it feels like. Your right hand on which you have worked. Does it feel somehow more soft, more young, more fresh, more clear? It feels different. Maybe you find words to describe it. And notice the difference with your left hand, where you did not do that work. Do you feel it is somehow less aware, less conscious, less clear, less fresh? Can feel the difference? What we did was entirely by a psychological process. There was no physical movement at all. We changed the hand's temperature, we made it feel different, we changed the quality of its awareness. And then if you do that with slow conscious movement, just extending the hand, making it conscious in activity as it moves, you can actually will into the hand freedom from certain illnesses, discomforts. If you have a cut, you can will it to heal, and so on. And then if you extend this exercise now to the whole body, your entire body feels as if rejuvenated, more young, more fresh, more plastic, more receptive. But also in your body you experience this aspiration and joy. And you receive, as you receive the descent of light and peace, your body enjoys that peace and brightness and clarity. So such would be the nature of that simple exercise of going up and down the stairs, or playing tennis, or going for a walk, or cycling, or whatever it is the physical exercise you do, and in particular when you do asanas. The advantage of asanas is that all the parts of your body, if you do a comprehensive set, all the parts of your body are stretched and made more conscious. And if done with this awareness infused into that stretch, the results can have actually a spiritual benefit. And then, because your mind and your emotions and your body are all entangled in one frame, the body awareness becoming more clear, more fresh, more free, makes your mind clear, fresh, relaxed, calm. Makes your emotions more relaxed, more controlled, more balanced. You'll find yourself getting less angry, less stressed, more clear-headed, with better understanding and insight, relating to people in a different way, spontaneously, with no other effort. Just a simple exercise of changing the body consciousness has this ripple effect on all these levels. So this is the objective of any physical culture. Mother puts it this way: a physical culture which aims at building a body capable of serving as a fit instrument for a higher consciousness demands very austere habits, a great regularity in sleep, food, exercise, and every activity. And so she goes. So here we have just done one simple exercise. What if now we extend it to other activities? So the next activity is food. The food that you eat and the effect that it has. The mother narrates an incident where somebody who had never eaten non-vegetarian food ate a piece of meat for social compulsions. And that night she had a dream in which she felt herself the chicken, she felt the feathers plucked from her, she felt herself being cut up and all those things. Not a nice experience. But then she realized the point of the story is not that you shouldn't eat meat, it is that what you eat brings with it all of the psychological content of what you have eaten. The suffering that the animal went through comes into you in the meat. Or even if you're vegetarian, the person who cooked the meal was going through some pretty serious emotional problems. He or she was upset, was scolding the person helping, and all the anger, all the agitation is now imprinted in the food. And when you eat it, that's going into you. And for no reason at all, after having your meal, you find yourself getting into a quarrel, getting agitated and getting unusually disturbed. And you wonder why. I didn't do anything. Where did this come from? So you'll find in many of the more ascetic traditions, they're very careful about what food they eat. It's not just a question of vegetarian or non-vegetarian. It's about who cooked the food. Now, I know a particular person, very orthodox in his tradition, and he is, by his system that he follows, not allowed to eat food cooked by anybody else. Only a family member, only himself or a very close family member can cook his food. And for these reasons. When I was small, must have been in the age 10 to 20, in that range, for me it was a very vivid experience, because at home the food could be cooked either by my teacher's sister, or my mother, or there was a maidservant, a young girl. Any of the three could have cooked the food, but when I put the food in my mouth and chewed a little bit, I would know who had done it. Because of the difference in vibes. And the maidservant, when she had cooked it, I would get a dull headache. When my mother cooked it, it had a particular vibration, very distinctive, and when my teacher's sister cooked it, it had a different vibration, very distinct. And I could make out who had made it. And of course, because the third case gave me a headache, I would always tell them, please avoid that. But if one is sensitive, it hits you. If one is not sensitive, the effect is still there, you just don't notice it. That's all. So what about the food? What can we do? Well, the mother speaks of being conscious first of what you're eating, to give body proper nourishment. But then there is a physical nourishment and then there is a psychological nourishment. Why is it? You go anywhere in the world, to any family, any person, and they will tell you, my mother cooks the best food. Or rarely, it's not my mother, it's my grandmother. And if you observe them cooking, you will notice why. The person who puts the most love in the food is the one who makes the best food. And if you notice the difference between a good cook and a bad cook, now you may go to a restaurant, a good cook and a bad cook. The difference is this: the good cook is the one who enjoys cooking. For them, it's such a passion. They make an ordinary meal they've made every day for the last 10 years, but they do it with a passion, with a joy which infects the food. And that's what you're enjoying when you eat it. That's why the food is so much more delicious. So there's a whole psychological nourishment that comes in the food that you eat. And sometimes there's a lot of psychological junk that comes in. With the junk food, the chemical junk is accompanied by psychological junk. And so we need to do something about it. Just as much attention that we pay to ensure that we eat healthy chemical food, we must pay the same attention also for the healthy psychological nourishment part of it. So one of the things you can do, sometimes you don't have a choice, you're in a restaurant, you don't know who cooks the meal, even the person who serves it can introduce their own things, but you have a choice. Having put the food before you, you can invoke something consciously into the food, something of greater value. So you will find in our traditions, they often teach you, they do weird things sometimes. There's somebody who mumbles a prayer and takes water in his hands and sprinkles water all around the plate. And that's not something you do in a 5-star hotel restaurant. But he's going to do it anyway. And you wonder what he's doing. But the idea behind it is very simple, and you can do it without the water sprinkling. The idea is you purify the food from all the mixtures which may have come into it. So there's two sides to purification. One is removing the negative vibes which might have come. The other is invoking positive vibes into it. And what's the most positive vibe you can bring in? What? Yes, of course. The highest, the divine consciousness. And you invoke the divine consciousness into the food. And ask that to fill the food with all the vibrations which will nourish your mind, your emotions, your life energies, and your body. You know, we tend to think of the body only in terms of coarse material atoms and molecules and vitamins and minerals. That's only the coarsest part which you can see through your microscope. There are subtler gradations of matter which we can feel but which we can't see through the microscope. If you just bring your hands together, bring your palms together about 1 or 2 centimeters and gently move your hands like this, sideways and then back and forth, until you begin to feel something. Even without touching, do it slowly, gently. It's a subtle feeling, gently. Can you feel something? Something as if touching? Now what's touching? You don't see anything, and you can feel the sensation of something touching. And then after a while, if you distance your hand, you might even be able to see that like a haze around, like a layer, 0.5 centimeter or 1 centimeter around. You can see it around the head sometimes of people. It's actually an extension of your gross body. We call it the subtle physical. It is still physical, but it has a subtle character. And a lot of the true nourishment in the food is subtle physical rather than gross. The grossest part is what the body evicts at the end of the day. It's this in between which is the most nourishing part. So when we invoke the divine influence, we ask not only for nourishment for the mind, for the heart, but also for the body tissue itself. And it will give you that substance. Infuse it into the food. But you have one responsibility after that. You should not waste it. If you have thus infused it into the food, you should not waste the food, because it's something very precious. So, as a rule, you should take only as much as you think you will eat. But yes, once in a while you may have some aberrations. Then you can, of course, offer your thanks and then say, unfortunately, I have to set this aside. But because it's subtle physical, you can even absorb it to yourself, even if you don't eat it physically. The mother narrates a very interesting incident during the time when she was going training in occultism. She was undergoing training through Monsieur and Madame Théon. And Madame Théon was an accomplished occultist. And she demonstrated how one day after doing a lot of work, she was completely exhausted. And that kind of exhaustion, the body needs a long time to recover. Because not only it has to recover energy, it has to recover material substance which has been burnt up. And she demonstrated it this way. She took, I think it was a pumpkin. Grapefruit she took, placed it on her stomach. She lay down and placed the grapefruit on her stomach. Now, location is interesting. The stomach is where the absorption takes place of the nourishment. And then she goes into a kind of a trance. And at the end of half an hour, the mother said the entire grapefruit had shrunk to a tiny little ball. There was no physical ingestion through the mouth. It was directly substance absorbed. But you see how much of the real nourishing substance is non-material. And it can be absorbed directly. And one can absorb it from the food, thus received sanctified food. You can absorb the material and leave behind the coarsest, densest crust of matter. So the idea here is this. In dealing with food, we become conscious of the deeper dimensions. And we bring into it a spiritual influence. And then respect it suitably. The next point for the body training, physical culture, mother speaks of is sleep. And sleep is one of those things which we waste the most time in. Inevitably, when you have too much work, the one thing you compromise is sleep. You don't compromise your food, but you compromise sleep. And you can compromise for a few days, eventually it catches up and your body breaks down. So you have to give in. But there are people who sleep very little. Leonardo da Vinci, extraordinary genius, slept only 1 hour a day. Did you know that? It's not well known. And that 1 hour was not continuous. He slept 4 times in the day, 15 minutes each. Weird. How did he do it? If only we could do that, we would have so much more time to do our work. In fact, mother did it for a long time. For about 10 or 15 years, there's a letter of the mother to her son, where she writes for the last, I'm not sure it's 10 or 15 years, for the last, 10 or 15 years, I have not slept at all, she says. I sit on a couch, go into concentration for about 15 minutes, and come out fully refreshed and continue my day. She did not have a bed to lie down on during that period. This is the early years of the ashram. Much later, I think it was after Sri Aurobindo's accident, that when the room upstairs was built, that she had a place to lie down on. Otherwise she had none. And she would sit on this little couch, and then she explained what she did. And we understand better what sleep really is about. She says that during sleep, a part of our consciousness goes deep, layer by layer, all the way to the deepest until it touches the highest Satchidananda. And it remains in contact with that briefly for 2 or 3 seconds. And that's the true source of nourishment and refreshment. And then all the rest of the sleep is the return journey coming out. Interestingly, modern science monitoring brain waves confirms this, because the graph is series of REM sleeps, deeper each time, going deeper and deeper, until there's one which goes all the way to the deepest. If you don't get that, you don't get refreshed. If you get that, after that, the rest of the journey is returned back to wakefulness. Now, what Mother did was, because she had developed the capacity, she could consciously go in all the way to the Satchidananda, make that contact for 2 or 3 seconds, and then come out, all in 15 minutes. And she had all the regeneration needed for the mind and body. So you have a clue here. Perhaps we might not be capable of doing the same thing in 15 minutes, but if we can change the quality of sleep, then the same time we give to the sleep will lead to something more refreshing as an outcome. We can perhaps even reduce the duration of the sleep, not too much, but just a little bit, and still come out fully refreshed. And most interestingly, we could change the character of the sleep. Instead of being a state of unconsciousness, we could become semi-conscious or differently conscious, so that something interesting could continue during the sleep and the time would not be wasted. 1/3 of your life, they say, is what we waste in sleep. But if you make it semi-conscious, many interesting things are possible. So how do we do all this? The first thing is to change the state in which you go to sleep. The secret of all sleep training is the state in which you go to sleep. That decides the entire duration and the outcome, the state in which you emerge from sleep. If you go to sleep tired, exhausted, dull, you wake up tired and dull. You go to sleep fresh, you wake up fresh. Now that sounds paradoxical. I'm going to sleep because I'm tired, and you're telling me to go to sleep fresh. How is that possible? We notice when there are days when you're so exhausted that you crash into bed, you don't get sleep. At least the sleep is not restful. Because you're so tired, you just can't get good sleep. You have to avoid that. If you're so tired, stop. Take a few deep breaths. Read something uplifting. Read Savitri. Doesn't need too much brain effort, but it gets you fresh somehow, lifts you differently. And when you feel relaxed and calm and clear, then you go to sleep in that state. The result will be you'll wake up fresh. Also, when you go in this way consciously, you can put an intention. And the intention goes deep into your subconscious and pops up later. It's like a post-hypnotic suggestion. Do you know how powerful hypnosis is? Under hypnosis, you can be told that I'm holding here a stick of burning incense. If your hypnosis is deep enough, I touch this to the person under hypnosis and he'll say, ouch, that burns. It's a pen, there's no heat. But because he's been told it's burning incense, ouch, that hurts. And in a few seconds, a black mark forms where it's got burnt because the body was convinced it had been burnt. That's the power of hypnosis. It can change your body tissue response. It can burn as well as heal a burn. Isn't that powerful stuff? And if you could put a suggestion deep into your sleep, in your subconscious, and that suggestion works from within, it can overcome, it can change so many things. Anybody has some persistent chronic problem, maybe with the stomach, maybe with something or the other, you can get rid of it. What is a chronic problem? It's a habit ingrained in the body consciousness. That's all. You know, doctors tell you, it's not good that you keep having this illness. It could become chronic. What do they mean by that? It could become so deeply ingrained as a habit that you won't be able to get free of it even with medicine. That's what we mean by chronic. It's a habit. It's gone into your subconscious and you're unable now to access because that domain is outside your domain of awareness. But it is in your access while going to sleep. You can put a suggestion. This irritation in my stomach, whatever the chronic problem. This habit, you will the correction. Put an intention, put a prayer, formulate it, articulate it in words if you like, visualize it. But the secret to any such post-hypnotic suggestion or subconscious suggestion in sleep is you must affirm the positive, not the negative. You don't say, I want to be free of smoking. It doesn't work. You have to say, I want to enjoy fresh air. Okay? You have to assert the positive. Instead of saying, I must be free of my stomach pain, you say, my stomach should become healthy, warm, fresh, free of pain. The assertion has to be something positive, and that's what the subconscious pushes towards. So while going to sleep, you put yourself in the right state, put a certain intention, and go to sleep. Now the intentions could be of many kinds. There's an exercise that the mother recommends before sleeping, and she says to review the whole day. All the things you did, all the thoughts, all the feelings you had. And then put a correction where necessary. I got upset. What do I want to do instead of getting upset? And you program yourself to do something different. You put an intention. Instead of getting upset next time, I will give a smile and say thank you. Whatever it is you want to put as your corrective response, you put that intention, visualize it, will it. And having done the whole day's survey, offer the whole day to the divine, free of the burden of the day, you go to sleep. And all these suggestions you've put now go deep inside, they work within, and there's a deeper wisdom which also uses them to reshape, remold your personality. If you do this persistently, within 2 or 3 weeks, you can recast some of your personality character problems. I have a character which is always a little negative, pessimistic, gets upset, gets angry, whatever it is. I can change that within 2 or 3 weeks, and that's very fast. Things which take years can be done within a few weeks. Not only that, while entering sleep, you can program yourself to wake up at a particular time. Put an intention, I need to wake up at this time, and pop, you'll wake up without alarm clock. For a few days, you might want to keep the alarm clock as a backup, but still you'll find you'll wake up 5 minutes before. Some of you probably do it already, but you see how it works. And then you can do something more useful. You can put an intention that you'll remember your dreams when you wake up. And at the moment when you wake up from sleep, you will have the memory of your immediate dream before. If you remain very quiet, you can access backwards, get to the dream before that, and get to the dream before that. It's possible to train yourself to recover the full sequence of dreams through the night, from the point you went to sleep till you wake up. It takes a little time, but at least you can access 1 or 2 dreams. And if you can take the thread all the way, keep the full continuity of dreams awareness, you have one more step achieved. You can now will an intention to keep a chain of awareness, a thread of awareness alive through the night. I have a friend, he's a Swami in the Ramakrishna Mission order. He told me he's done this every night. Now it's decades. He started as a monk when he was barely, I think, 18 or 20. And I don't know when he developed this, but he has it now permanently. So in the middle of the night, if a dream starts forming, there's this part, this thread of awareness. It's not like we are awake. It's a thread of subtle, subliminal awareness, which pops up and says, I don't like this dream. And he can will the dream to change during the sleep. Negative dream, nightmare, out. Shift attention and a different dream starts. Very simple. But something even more interesting is possible. You can train your consciousness to become conscious in the dream, fully aware. And then you have access to something which is the most enjoyable game. It's a virtual reality game. Have you seen the movie Inception? About these people who get into other people's dreams and then they shape reality? You can actually do that. That movie is based on reality. There are people who train themselves for this. We can all train ourselves for this. To become aware in the dream that you are dreaming, and then you can will things to change. Reshape reality It's a whole virtual reality game. You can experience whatever you like. You can float, you can fly, you can make buildings, break down buildings, change the ground, whatever it is. And there are many levels on which this can be experienced in the mental worlds, the vital worlds, and then there are layers very close to the physical, where it's as vivid and concrete as this physical world. And you actually don't know if you're sleeping or you're awake, because it's so vivid. Now, the people who enter this domain, they actually think they're awake, and they move around, and then something somehow doesn't work, and they figure out that it's a dream, and then they try to wake up. You see, this problem is there in the movie Inception, where they don't know if they're still dreaming or they're awake. It's based on a real problem for people who train in this layer. It's not common, you'll probably not get into it, but it's just for your knowledge. It's fascinating. There's one example I know of a person who, it's in a book that he's written. He discovered that he was still in this subtle physical world, and he willed himself to wake up. Now he was awake, he got up from his bed, moved around, and then again discovered something was not okay, and he was still in that subtle physical, and he woke himself up 4 times, 5 times. And then he went to the lab where he was working on the sleep research, and he found there his colleague wiring up a bear. And then he knew he was still in the dream, and he had to go back and wake up. But I'm just telling you this because the layers very close to the material, there are worlds which are so vividly material that it's often difficult to distinguish. But all of this is part of the adventure available in sleep state. What people call out-of-body experiences are all available to you to explore the whole universe. You can go to the moon, you can go to other planets, other galaxies, you can go to another part of the earth, watch what your friends are doing. No restriction potentially. So these are all domains of exploration in sleep. Imagine that 1/3 of our life which is wasted. We could be doing so many more interesting things. There's a very interesting psychic, one of the greatest psychics in America, who died just 3 or 4 years ago, Ingo Swann. You can read about him. He's most famous for his what they call remote viewing. He could in this way project himself to any part of the earth. And the CIA spent $20 million developing a training program around him to train other people to be able to do the same thing. And they were, of course, interested in spying on others. So they recently declassified some 10,000 documents. And you can see extraordinary examples where this man would go somewhere and describe in exact physical details all that he was seeing inside the most super secret research labs of the world. And there was nothing which could stop him. He was also asked to remote view the Jupiter. Before the first craft reached Jupiter, he described things on Jupiter which later were confirmed by these crafts, which were totally unknown before. He remote viewed the moon and saw interesting things there. All this is part of the exploration possible to us, and part of the human potential someday, which we will freely tap. So this is as far as sleep is concerned. Of course, the focus of the mother in this is more to be able to give the body sufficient rest, so that the body can be made conscious, and the sleep itself is not a dulling, heavy, unconscious sleep, but an uplifting, liberating experience. In the activities of the day, she speaks of changing our relationship with work. Now, most of the time, we have a relationship where I like this work, I don't like this work. So I do what I like, I don't do, or I try to avoid what I don't like. She says, it is true that one only does well what one is interested in doing. This is true, but it is truer still that one can learn to find interest in everything one does, even in what appear to be the most insignificant chores. And the secret, how do you find interest in what is otherwise not interesting? The secret of this attainment lies in the urge towards self-perfection. The mother is very precise in her wordings. She always goes to the heart of the problem. You can read a whole lot of self-help books, which will give you many different alternate approaches to the same problem. But if you observe them all, they're all effective because of something deeper, which is effective because of something deeper, which ultimately is effective because of this, the urge towards self-perfection. That's the core, that's the secret. Everything else are ways of doing this or fulfilling this or applying this and so on. The urge towards self-perfection, it's already there inside you. You don't have to create it. You just have to become aware of it. You'll notice that when you don't do something well, you're not happy about it. When you do something well, there's a joy. And it doesn't matter whether the other person appreciates or not, you are happy because you did it so well. And this is something innate to us. And what we can begin to do is, whatever the activity, however trivial seeming, we bring our awareness in it to make it a little better, a little more perfect, a little more beautiful, a little more neat, a little more organized, a little more efficiently done, with less wasted movements. A single act of lifting up a glass to drink water, try to do it as a dancer would. Perfectly, with no unnecessary movements. I move like this. Oh, I spilled some. That's typical of a confused, chaotic response. And you can just go smoothly, lift it, not one wasted movement, sweep and close it in one go, no hesitation, and put it back. And train yourself for this. You'll find little slips, but as you make it conscious, as you make it perfect, you'll find it's such a joy. It's a trivial thing. Nobody notices in your house. You're doing it while you're eating food with a whole group of people. You're enjoying it. And then the way you pick up the food, the way you mix the food, you can pick the most ordinary activity and somehow make it slightly more perfect. And that brings a joy with it. And in this way, everything you do from the point you wake up till you go to sleep, you can nudge a little, push a little, and fill it with a touch of joy, a touch of joy, and a touch of joy. And this urge towards self-perfection grows in intensity because you're exercising it, you're bringing it out more. And we can change our relationship with work. Things I find boring to do, I can take up and now begin to make this correction in my attitude towards the work. And now I begin to enjoy it so much, somehow I'm happy to do it the next time. You don't like wiping the dishes, washing the dishes. Well, if you try to do it in this spirit, you'll begin to enjoy it so much. After a while, you'll say, let me do the dishes, I enjoy it really. And I know this from experience, myself and others, so I can assure you it works. She also makes a very important comment about conservation of the body's sexual energy. And the reason for this, she gives, is that it is an alchemical energy which can be directed towards either mechanically towards procreation or towards new creation. It is a creative energy, a creative power which can be directed upwards, or if you ignore it, it lapses and then it flows downwards. And this is something which may not be always relevant to everybody, depending on the kind of life one is at and the responsibilities one has in the family. But she says since ancient times, the most sacred and secret schools, which were aspiring towards immortality, give importance to the conservation of this energy. And for this reason, I'll touch upon two things which have to do with this. First, let's start with an example, an incident. I was in Bombay with somebody who was living a very different life. I happened to be a friend of a guest with him. And we were eating. And he said, "Oh, you're from Pondicherry." He was slightly tipsy. He had taken a little alcohol. He tapped his glass. "Everybody, attention, I have something very interesting to share. I have a question and I want you to answer it." So with great fanfare, he said, "I went to Pondicherry once and I had a very interesting experience. I came to the ashram. Oh, it was very peaceful. And then I went back the same evening. I drove back to Madras and I had this tremendously strong sexual urge. How can you explain that? Ha 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 ha. So it was very interesting. I found it a very interesting question. So I told him, yes, that's because the space you entered had a very strong spiritual energy. You received the spiritual energy, and then depending on your proclivity, your temperament, the energy works to direct itself to action. In your case, since that was your natural tendency, it went downwards. With somebody else, it would have gone upwards. That's the only difference. He was a little upset about that, but but this was the point. This is the point, very important, because it is an energy. And an energy can be directed to different uses. Nature directs the energy to create another life form. To create another life form, the best of what is in you must be gathered, concentrated, and then projected as a seed to create the new life. Now, what is interesting, and we find this now in DNA research, is that the habits which you have get transmitted along. It's not just genes, there's the whole RNA and there's a whole machinery which conveys your current state of emotions, and the experiences you've gone through in life are also accumulated and projected and thrown into the child and appear in them as habits, tendencies in their body and in their psychology. So now imagine what this means. The body is continuously accumulating all the best of your consciousness, from the material to the psychological, and concentrating it. Now at that point, if you throw it out, well, it can lead to new life or it's wasted. But if you conserve it, that same material now gets transmuted. There's an alchemical process. It gets transmuted and now begins to feed your own nervous system and your life energies with a concentrated, intense energy. And it is this which is the basis in the ancient times of training your higher mental faculties, of what we call medha. Medha is a power of the intellect where you have perfect recall, perfect memory, brilliance of intellect, ability to do multiple things at the same time, and so on. This power was consciously cultivated by conservation of energy. Not only physical sexual energy, but also speech energy, and the two are very closely connected. So very often you'll find people who have conserved physical energy may waste it through speech. And so one has to work on restraint. This also is something Mother discusses much later on. One has to conserve energy, concentrate, and direct the energy. And when you direct it in this way, whatever work you do, you have a tremendous amount of energy to do it. Because it is the best accumulated energy of your being. So where you are already in a framework where you have normal sexual relations, well, consider moderation, a balance. That you do not expend or exhaust the body too much. You use as necessary, but conserve where you can to direct it towards a purpose. And this is where you will see an increase, tremendous increase of mental creativity and vital energy to do work. And they're tied to this basic conservation of energy and channeling energy. So that's the other theme which she concludes with for the body's training and the body's tapasya. So it's a broad enough framework. We have touched upon a few very specific practical examples. I'd like to pause here and invite your questions on anything we have discussed or anything else that you would like to ask. Yes.
When it comes to sleep, some people recollect dreams a lot. In my case, I hardly ever remember any dreams. But what is the significance of that? Is it just the consciousness needs to be trained so that you
You'll notice that when you remember a dream, it's at the moment when you wake up. And, okay, the question is, The question is, some people remember dreams a lot, some don't, and what's the reason for that? So you notice that when you remember the dream, it is just at the moment when you wake up. Afterwards, as you get up and get into your activity, the dream fades out. Do this as an exercise. You keep a pen and paper next to you when you go to sleep. As soon as you wake up, note down with minimal movement. Don't move the body, just the hand. With minimal movement, you note down whatever you can of the dream, as much detail as you can. Okay? Now you put it aside, you get up from bed, walk around the room and come back and read the paper, you won't recognize half of it. You go and have a shower and come back, you won't recognize any of it, perhaps, that maybe a tiny bit. What happened? You lost memory while you were in activity. And what we discover, what we understand is that there is a deeper layer of consciousness where the dream took place, which has its own memory, and then the waking consciousness has its own memory, and the two are not connected. In between, in the transition, you're halfway here, halfway there, and you have a kind of a memory of both. But as you wake up fully, you lose the memory of the inner. So in itself, it may not be quality of sleep which is involved, but just the disconnection of the two memories. You may be inwardly awake during sleep, noticing, but not being able to remember in your waking state. In such cases, when you go back to sleep, in the halfway stage, you will recall yesterday's dream, sometimes. But you can bridge the two memories. Again, that's a discipline. By persisting in trying to remember and connecting the two, a bridge forms. Then you can remember the dream. But the other reason for not remembering is unconscious sleep. Where the sleep state has been mostly unconscious, then even the internal registration of the memory is not so strong. Nothing much remains because it's just chaotic impressions. Yes. Yes.
Why do we dream? And what part of our consciousness?
Okay. So, why do we dream and what part of our consciousness projects? We are not just the body, not the gross body. We describe in the yogic tradition 5 bodies. There's the gross physical body, there is the vital body made of life energies, which has its own form of energy, which is what we see through Kirlian photography, which is what you tap through acupuncture, and it's an energy body. And then there is a mental body, which is made of your mind awareness and thought substance, which has an independent awareness of its own, can live separate from the gross body and can live in separate and rejoin. That's what you call out-of-body experiences. And then you have 2 more above that, which are still very vaguely formed or mostly unformed in most people. But they represent our spiritual potential. Because they are not developed, we don't have access to those domains directly. As they become more developed, we have access to those worlds the same way as we have access to these worlds. So, but staying with the lower 3, these 3 are normally tied together. So tightly that what you think affects your biology, what's happening in your body affects your thoughts. Okay? During sleep, there is a slight separation that takes place between the subtle body and the gross body. The gross body is in what we call sleep. It is in a state of relaxation and rest. The subtle body, consisting of your mind and emotions, disengages slightly. This gives a chance for the gross body to regenerate and heal itself. Otherwise, the strong mental imprints, your thoughts, energies, intentions, shape the energy field in such a way that the gross body can never heal itself fully. You're in a state of tension. You're a drive, you want to do, you're pushing forward, and the body never gets a chance to relax. So the separation allows the body to relax, gross body to relax, and the subtle body, meanwhile, because it is free of the gross body, experiences things of the subtle world. So at its lowest level, there's just a rising and falling of thought impressions, memories. Things from the subconscious just rise up in a chaos. That's often the normal character of dreams. In a slightly more awakened state, a part of your consciousness now registers things of the subtle worlds. You can actually go seeing things, wandering around, experiencing, and like I said, you can create your own realities in those worlds. And then occasionally there are parts which may touch something still higher, where you have what we call symbolic dreams, which represent something through the symbolism. Like all of us would have had dreams of this kind, where the train is about to leave and you realize you have not bought the ticket, or you have not packed your bags, or something is left behind. And if you notice, the form is something familiar, but the feeling behind is that there's an opportunity but you're not prepared. That's what the symbol represents. An opportunity in life that you need to now catch up with. You need to become more vigilant and catch the opportunity. So there are things which come to us from higher levels of our own through the dream symbolism. Yes.
I have, since you're talking about symbolism, one of the things, a lot of people do get this, they'll dream and then they suddenly find themselves totally naked in public.
Uh-huh.
What is that about?
The question is about dreams where you find yourself totally naked in public, and then suddenly you don't know what to do, you want to rush, you want to hide. If you see the feel behind the symbol, it's the sense of being vulnerable, being exposed, being not sufficiently protected, and the need to have some kind of a protective layer to disengage sufficiently from excessive exposure, things like that. So it's a reflection of an internal state that is coming in. Yes?
Can dreams come true?
Can dreams come true? Yes, very often they do come true, not always though. Sometimes they almost come true, but they miss. And there's a whole rationale to that. Remember, a part of our consciousness wanders, enters these higher states, and then comes back. As it's coming back, it picks up things happening on those domains. And if there's something very strong, an imprint of a strong energetic event forming, we often tend to glimpse it. And the lower you come to the gross physical, the more likely those things are frozen and fixed. So in the domain of the mind, things could still be at a conceptual level. It may take a long time, years, decades to happen or not. At the level of life energies, conceptual energy has now taken on energetic drive. So it's more likely to happen. But still, one drive can get conflicted by another drive and fail. But as you come lower than that, on the subtle physical particularly, it's already concretized into material circumstances and is very likely to happen, though not exactly, because there's still a gap. So as you wake up, at the moment when you're about to wake up, you're closest to the material. That's why they say the dreams of early morning are likely to come true. You see the logic behind it, okay? Because you're closest to the material. But still, if you saw an accident, next morning you wake up, you're going, and then you find yourself in that exact same scene, and you say, oh my God, this is what I saw in the dream. The accident is going to happen. You still have the choice to intervene and prevent it. Because between from where you saw to where it's going to happen, there's still a gap. Even if you don't actually physically, if you're not present there, you can pray and invoke a higher intervention to come in between and modify the accident and prevent it completely if necessary. Yeah. So there is a truth to this thing that what you see in dreams has a tendency to happen, but it's not fixed. You can still intervene to change. Yeah.
The last question. How does all what you taught relates to Tapasya? How the beauty comes involved?
Yes. So where is the beauty coming in? The whole focus of this text, the focus of the mother was to make the body strong and beautiful as an instrument for the divine expression. All your thoughts, however wonderful they are, all your energies and aspirations still need the body to act. And therefore this is the base, and in matter, in form, it is in beauty that the divine expresses itself most. The body's beauty is not merely how you decorate it. It is the glow of that divinity which comes through the form. It's something which you have to recognize is the essence of beauty. When scientists try to define beauty, they reduce to some mathematical formula describing symmetry of the face. But that's not beauty. You can see a beautiful face even in profile and it's beautiful. It's not symmetric in your view. And yet it's beautiful. You have seen an old person full of wrinkles and there's a great beauty to that face. So it's not the specific of whether the skin is tight or wrinkled, which makes it beautiful. You can see a person walking and the gait is beautiful, the movement is beautiful and harmonious. So it's not the shape of the form, but a dynamic transitioning process which can be beautiful. So when you dwell on this idea of beauty, you discover the true sense of beauty is something which glows out through the form, for which the form is only a vehicle. And it is such that the divine beauty can glow out through the physical body. Of course, the body's form and health and energy, etc., are a part of its completeness. And that's why we find some extraordinary descriptions of people when the mother was at that time maybe past 85. And somebody saw her during the darshan and said, I saw the most beautiful woman I've ever seen in the whole world. And that was the form in which they saw. It was not obviously purely physical. Mother said they saw something of a subtle physical form also. But my point is, the sense of beauty in the body is the way through which the divine fulfills itself most completely. We did not discuss expression of beauty in life, because that is the other side of the whole story. Our focus has been entirely what we can do internally. But what we do internally then, of course, must reflect in our actions, in the way we organize our life. They say you can look at a person's room and describe the personality, because inevitably all our actions are a reflection of what we are. If we are chaotic internally, the chaos represents itself in the chaos externally. Someone else may come and sweep it and rearrange it, but then as I start using those things, they again tend to fall into the same pattern of chaos. So the internal state of harmony and beauty inevitably reflects in the external. And to that extent, the first correction will be internal in order to be able to make your external life also beautiful.